Okay, something must be really off here. Because the Mercedes contract situation is starting to get a little bit weird. Yes, I know we're technically still in silly season, but it's getting to the awkward kind of silly. Law, why are you poking this bear again? Are you that desperate for content? No, but you gotta admit, it is getting a little bit funny at this point. Because as I've said a couple of times on this channel, usually Mercedes likes to wrap up their contract talks by the end of August, and we're now headed toward the middle of September, and we've not heard a single peep of actual contractual progression or some kind of huge declaration that both drivers are going to be signed for whatever length of deal, because one thing would have to be clear to avoid any other awkward tension: they would both have to be announced at the same time. As we saw with Leclerc and Vettel in 2019, things get a little bit complicated going forward about who has the priority over whom. Now, of course, I'm quite certain that many of you are quick to assure me that we've heard plenty of sentiments regarding the matter from all the relevant parties, that everything is fine, something will be sorted, and we'll be home in time for tea. But honestly, at this point, I would like to see the baby. The latest chestnut to land in our notifications is to do with Toto's most recent explanation regarding the matter, and it really doesn't make for comforting reading. In fact, if you're a George fan, it could come across as downright insulting. But the reality is this: both his drivers, with only 8 races to go at this point, we're done with Europe. They're gonna be free agents next year. That's just the reality. But you're probably wanting to know what Toto exactly said, so here it is for your consideration. Ahem. We've not always gone for very long contracts and kept it short. The longest we have done is a 2-year with some options, so it's a Mercedes pattern. We were on a 1+1 deal, and that's traditionally what we have done. The drivers are under tremendous pressure. If a driver said they would be quicker with a 2-year contract, that mindset is not right. I mean, okay, Toto isn't wrong in that regard. There is previous to suggest that Mercedes doesn't tend to do multi-year deals. But I think at this point it's more to do with the timing of settling things. I recall Wolff famously saying ages ago that he could sort out a contract within 24 hours. Well, since the start of the year, it's been 24 weeks. But maybe there's a little bit of a tell here, and I might have to get the spanner out for this one, but very, very small aperture. But maybe it's to do with the post-Hamilton era that Mercedes no longer wants the drivers to have too much leverage. Mercedes ideally would like to hold the power and be able to choose on their terms who gets what in particular deals. Because we've all heard the rumours about George Russell demanding upwards of $35 million a year, or a salary that matches Lando Norris's, something that Nico Rosberg says is really in George's dreams. But it does make you wonder. I don't think it's that crazy, honestly. Especially with George being Mercedes' leader and right in the middle of his prime. Granted, Mercedes like short deals with options. Short deals keep pressure high and gives Mercedes room to pivot, in case a better driver emerges or someone wants out early. Max and Lewis, for example. It's flexible control by design. Wolff saying that 2-year contracts as a starting point are not right is a negotiation tactic, and it explains a lot about why Kimi and George really don't have public extensions yet. Ideally, both would like a 2+1 deal. That is a maximum of 3 years. I feel that would be perfectly reasonable. It's exactly what Pierre Gasly got over at Alpine through 2028, a 2-year extension to his already deal with 1 year to go. I am working on that video, by the way, so do hang on to the channel for when that video comes out. Maybe subscribe for when you get that dropping immediately. But it doesn't really seem that Wolff is willing to bite on 2 drivers who are thoroughbred Mercedes junior driver. Russell and Antonelli are Mercedes coded through and through. They are the definitive examples of what Mercedes wants as Formula 1 drivers. You've got to remember that, folks. They are the graduates of the system that was born from letting Verstappen get away. They've been refined to be the archetypal data-driven racer which would perfectly blend into the makeup of the F1 team. These 2 making it to the top is a beacon of hope for all of the other Academy participants that, yes, both seats are open to you. So to stall on said talks is really concerning, especially since George is quite clearly the best of the rest this year. And yes, despite Antonelli having his own fair share of mistakes being at one of the front-running teams, he is certainly by far not the worst rookie on the grid. But considering the amount of incidents that he's had in the last few races, I think it might be arguably valid to say that he's not the most impressive rookie of this year, considering which team is related to which driver. I mean, you got to look, it's a toss-up between Hadjar and Bortoletto at this point. But I would say that part of the pressure on Antonelli is the fact that he doesn't have a contract for this year. Heck, Toto, even if you just gave him a 1+1 deal or something like that, just something to know that, don't worry, Kimi, you're in the car for 2026, let's get on top of those problems and get to it next year with brand new regulations, that would be fine. And it's not a good look for any youngster within the Mercedes Academy, is that, yeah, they are the definitive Mercedes driver and even their own boss is a little bit iffy about them. Let's look at Russell first. His deal runs out at the end of this year, and he's historically said that multi-year contracts mean little in F1 because exit clauses are everywhere. And he's also played down any drama about timing within the media. He has therefore been a good boy for Mercedes and done his best to not stir the pot overtly. He does have leverage related to results on track. I mean, he is P4 in the championship. But then I recall Toto not saying that long ago that George had nothing to prove in regards to results. That the team already knew what Russell was capable of and that there was no point in him trying to do any more. As in, don't worry, George, we have everything that we need to know about your performance. We will then get to the ends of the contracts accordingly. You've really got to be thinking here that whatever's going on behind the scenes, it's down to the minutiae, the real details in that contract that's become a sticking point. That, in terms of what George can do in a W16 and the W17 next year, that's not up for debate at all. And I don't think George wants to leave Mercedes or anything like that. I don't think he's going to be that ungrateful and jump at the first sign of trouble. He is really trying his damnedest to make this work, but clearly there is something that we are not privy to, us regular F1 fans and guys on ladders, and it is those things in the fine print which can end talks entirely. That if you can't get into the real specific details and come up with a compromise or something that would ideally benefit the driver, which is something I think Mercedes do not want to happen in their new era without Lewis, then that could easily be the deal breaker. There'll be a team out there that will offer that in spades and say, don't you worry, George, we'll give you whatever you want. And if you recognise the accent, you can probably see where I'm going here. Aston Martin. Martin Brundle's point regarding Russell surely feeling bruised in relation to the whole Max Verstappen affair and his boss's constant comments regarding the Dutchman's brilliance surely must be dealing a few of those said bruises. Especially when you look to Monza and Toto then just says out loud to everyone, when you look at Monza, you can see that one driver was making us all look stupid. Yes, we get it, Toto. You absolutely worship the ground that Max walks on. We get it. You missed out on him for next year. Deal with it. You got two perfectly good drivers. And I believe Martin Brundle in regards to George Russell, since they both hail from the area of East Anglia that is King's Lynn. Antonelli, he is a little bit of a different puzzle, and the reality is this, is that he was swept into Mercedes in the wake of Lewis Hamilton, shocking the world at the beginning of last year that he was going to be leaving Mercedes and ending his F1 career with the Scuderia, of all places. The dream team that he thought would never actually be realised, and it's not exactly been the best dream so far, but, I mean, Italy looked okay. I mean, he was actually quite happy, and the Tifosi accepted him warmly. And the thing about this is that when Kimi was announced, they said, Toto and the team, that this year would be a learning year. To really understand the car, there'd be no pressure, and then they would see what would happen in the new regulation cycle. It was a fairly good idea. But then, when you get Wolff calling Monza underwhelming, broke from the usual rookie shielding, it was a real red flag in this partnership. But to be fair, the article in which this was found did have Toto reiterate the support he had for the Italian rookie, but it's still quite the hammer blow, especially when this time last year Kimi crashed out in FP1 for his debut. But then I remember Toto completely absolving him, acting like some kind of proud father and saying, yes, Kimi crashed, what does it matter? All of those 1.5 laps before he actually crashed, they were absolutely electric. Can you see my boy? He was absolutely amazing. But right now, in the lieu of Max, Toto is like Andy from Toy Story 2. I said, I forgot, you're broken. I don't want to play with you anymore. Yeah, when your boss is starting to nudge you like that, it really does give me the impression that Kimi is now having to be a little bit more accountable regarding his performance, and that things might get a little bit more tense in the garage. And it's a real crying shame when you actually consider that Pete Bollington, his own race engineer, and the chief engineer and designer James Allison are all happy with Kimi's progress, but Toto apparently is starting to, cool off on the Italian. And I think that's a little bit unfair because Kimi did qualify on the third row ultimately. That wasn't too bad. That was a really good recovery drive. It's just a shame that he got a time penalty is all. Otherwise, I would say that would have been a perfectly reasonable Italian Grand Prix coming back from all of that, and his really damning European campaign where he barely scored anything, Miami and Canada being the sole exceptions, which does show us that he has got something. Antonelli himself has talked about the pressure, and he is grateful for the team giving him this opportunity, and he's hoping that maybe Mercedes will decide something rather than just handing him a long guarantee just because. But it is still weird to have heard nothing in relation to securing at least what Bottas got, a one-year jobby just to shut things up in preparations for next year. Then maybe they can better assess a longer deal after Antonelli's sophomore year plays out. Speaking of, there is that reset to consider. The sport's technical overhaul is a big one of the biggest in its entire history, and teams, they're craving contract optionality going into a rules change because relative performance can easily flip. And also, there are some drivers who are a little bit hesitant going for long-term deals, unless your name is Pierre, Charles, Oscar, Lando, Max, what have you, who have committed well into the next regulation cycle. They are very much nailing their flags to the wall. And Mercedes keeping both seats open is still in touch with Wolff's contractual philosophy, it's just getting a little bit stretched out at this point. Contrast that to McLaren, and whilst Toto has recently called the entire team a bit of a corporate exercise in their approach to fairness and opportunity, they have been able to really maximise the idea of contract solidity. Them having no problems sorting out really early their contracts. What McLaren are trying to do, what they're trying to show us, is that stability is their biggest strength, whereas Mercedes, their flexibility is their strongest virtue. Both approaches do work until they don't. We will have to wait and see what happens with McLaren, and right now we'll also have to wait and see what happens with Mercedes. So what can you personally infer from Toto's latest stance? Well, at the moment, Mercedes are still sticking to their guns and just doing what they've been doing before. They are signalling to Russell that, yeah, we are happy to work with you, but that comes with some strings attached, that it's not completely at the whims and wants and needs of the driver. The best I think both drivers can really accept right now is a 1+1 jobby. I don't think that Mercedes will ever, in the rest of their time in Formula One, entertain the idea of a straight-up 3-year deal. A 2+1 would be the realms of fantasy at this point. Now, two other contextual notes are also worth pointing out here. First, Antonelli's 2025 seat was a bit of a rush job in lieu of Lewis Hamilton's departure. We all were speculating about what would have happened. Would Carlos Sainz have taken up the role for a year or two? Would it have been Alex Albon getting the call-up for his work with the Mercedes-powered Williams team? Or maybe Mick Schumacher would have gotten the call-up, the promotion from being their reserve driver? Or maybe Valtteri Bottas would have been brought back? And what that did show was that Mercedes were happy to move early, really early for them, when it suited them. And when it doesn't suit them, it seems that they're quite happy just to let it ride out for as long as possible, even if it does start to get a little bit awkward. They are in control here, and they are not going to allow any drivers from now on after Lewis to control them. Second, Russell has spent the season de-escalating the contract story, which does tend to happen when the destination is sorted, but the clauses are not. They do want to work together, but they're not sure how. It's not the end of the world here, but it's getting rather baffling at this point. I'm sure some of you are, I am sometimes, screaming, "Something's off here!" And no, it's not Kimi in the gravel or sweat in George's visor. You're not imagining it here, people. There is something really funny going on with this entire situation. The whole thing about Wolff saying that anyone who wants a 2-year deal has the wrong mindset for Mercedes is just really strange. It's still a relatively short deal, 2 seasons and that's your lot. And it's also not something that would sell stability for Mercedes. Toto happily saying to the world, yes, when it comes to Mercedes, you're not going to have a long-term contract. You have to basically live by the seat of your pants. In fact, you could easily argue that that kind of rhetoric could easily destabilise drivers. I just tell you, Kimi Antonelli, what he's going through right now, the fact he doesn't have a contract sewn up, at least just a 1-year deal, or if he didn't start off with at least a 1+1 deal, would indicate to me that that might be part of the reason why he is starting to make these mistakes. There is some pressure to be had here, and it has rattled him, and it's a really good thing that their leader, George Russell, Russell is made of really strong stuff, constantly up for the challenge, whether it's Lewis Hamilton as his teammate, or Max Verstappen as his rival in third place in the championship, or just a rival on a race-by-race basis. Russell has told us time and time again, he is absolutely ready to take Max on when it comes to fighting a world championship. The oddest note here is not to do with the timing of the calendar. That is a pretty odd one, but not the oddest. The oddest one here is to do with all of the background noise that's been going on. For the majority of this season, we've had the on-off talks about Max going to Mercedes. Thankfully, they've now been switched off, at least for the next 12 months or so. And given how Red Bull have been able to steady the ship in the wake of Christian Horner departing them, being ousted even, then going on to win their first Grand Prix without Christian Horner's influence right there in the garage, that is going to be a huge tell that whatever's going on behind the scenes between Mekis and Verstappen, it's producing results. This latest upgrade package seems to be vibing with Max, and that might be an indicator that he might be willing to see out the remainder of his 2028 deal. After that, who knows? Maybe he's just preparing Red Bull to be able to operate without him. And I'm quite certain that would be a sore spot for Toto. He had his one opportunity to grab Max, and he missed out again. I remember at the beginning of the season, Wolff claimed that Mercedes was super happy with their current pairing and hadn't talked to Max, but by late June, he was again entertaining the possibility. That public flip-flopping fuels market uncertainty. No wonder both seats are still on short deals. Three forces are pulling at once here. There is that Verstappen question which kept the market unsettled until very recently, when Max flat out committed himself to the team for next year, and maybe might see it for even longer. There's Antonelli's form inviting performance-based staging, and there's also Wolff's contract doctrine to take into account, which prizes flexibility over security. Basically, from what we're able to tell here is that in this future version of Mercedes going forward after Hamilton, he is more than happy, Toto, to make the drivers feel that little bit uncomfortable, to just keep the pressure on, so that means they are able to deliver. To make sure that no one driver rules the roost at Mercedes, even though they are technically the team leader. The fact that we are still seeing over the radio Russell's requests for certain tyres in qualifying being denied, that's not the mark of a team that values their leader without question. He has learned too much, Toto, from the days of Hamilton-Rosberg about keeping drivers on a very, very short leash, and obviously has been very much traumatised with what happened in 2016 especially. Even though he does look back on it with a wistful manner, Toto, saying that maybe he overmanaged them a little bit, well, I do think he is overmanaging the likes of Russell and Antonelli. And those two, they are very, very pliable and chill drivers when you think about it in comparison. They are not the two lions that Nico and Lewis were. So if the time comes that we do get the announcement, I wouldn't be surprised if it's something that's played really, really low, that it's not a big announcement or anything like that, and whatever deal we do get, it's going to be some kind of 1+1 deal with some added perks to keep it sweet. I mean, it can't really be a grandiose situation. The opportunity is passed for both drivers. We could have had an opportunity for George's contract to be announced at Silverstone. That slipped us by. Kimi Antonelli, Italian Grand Prix just gone. We didn't get that contract update. I mean, at the moment, it's not the end of the world, but it could soon be in the not-too-distant future. Right now, it's not looking like a full-blown crisis. It's just looking like strategically sloppy of Toto at the moment. It's sloppy, that's it. And I don't think that's something that Toto really wants to be symbolising Mercedes as. Sloppy, untidy, messy. Yes, I get it, he is wanting to be in control, but when the market gets really, really spicy, which it did when Verstappen was really concerned with Red Bull, when the market's hot, Mercedes just looked really doddery. And when we're going into a rule reset, the sponsors and partners of Mercedes, they are going to really want some stability here. I'm pretty sure that many of all of the logos that we're seeing on the W16, they're probably telling Toto, Guy, can you sort out that contract, please? We want to know who's actually going to be repping our brand. George is really, really good at that. He is, though. George is probably one of the best sponsor ambassadors on the grid at the moment. And public uncertainty can really dull momentum. I'm seeing this in the comments. People getting fed up with Mercedes. They had hope with the team, with both drivers at the beginning of the year, when they were second in the Constructors. Right now, when they're still dueling Ferrari, people don't really care about Mercedes. They sort of blended into the background and people just getting weary of all the contractual messing around. And the risk here is simple. Short horizons work for the team, but could fall apart when another team offers up immediately what one of their drivers has been craving. And Aston Martin can walk into that gap. They have the capital. Quite handily, in fact. Especially when you consider that Max has really not been talking about Aston Martin at all, and Adrian Newey recently said that, oh, where Aston Martin are right now and for the next couple of years, they are not in the position to cater to a multiple world champion that is Max Verstappen. Adrian did come out and say that. He was really, really frank about that. There is still much work to be done at that team. It really doesn't help that at the moment, Max is really, really talking up Ferrari. And I know the Italian Grand Prix is just gone, but the Tifosi really rate Max Verstappen as a natural-born racer, a leader, somebody who may resemble the likes of Michael Schumacher and Niki Lauda, the Dutchman ready to grab the Italian team by the scruff of their neck and say, hey, you do it like this, okay? Then you'll win. I think many of the Tifosi are swooning at this point. I think what George Russell really wants right now is a 3-year deal, at worst a 2+1, with guarantors that he will get a pay rise, having demonstrated his performance and capabilities of being team leader in 2025, and Mercedes not going to pot. The point here is that the Honda partnership is real. It gives Aston a story that sells. So what happens if they do actually put that deal in front of Russell and he bites? That would qualify as a crisis for how Mercedes wants to look, because it would imply that strategic untidiness has become strategic drift. Now, of course, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes here, not many of us do, but if that were to come about, and then Toto got wind of it, he would have to do a major course correction quickly. Toto's acting like he's got a pair of mediocre drivers here. What? He's got really, really good talent here. Roll with it. And even though George has said many times to the public that he's not been talking to other teams, come off it. That is just simply not true. His managers wouldn't be doing their job if they were being silent to all of the other teams who were actually interested if George were becoming available. I mean, come on. That's what they do. So to stop that from happening, if it becomes clear that talks are stalling, Mercedes, just give him the 2+1 and be done with it. Maybe with a mutual review window come the flyaway races ending next year, so that means they can actually see where they are, the team and the driver and the constructor. I don't think you need me to tell you that this year Wolff has been really saying strange stuff now that he's the most senior team principal on the grid with Horner's departure. It's just been really weird things or reactive things, almost kind of drifting in his own way. Now he's got nobody to really kind of pin needles in. He's not really like that with Brown at the moment, almost just saying, yeah, McLaren, there's absolutely nothing we could do with Mercedes. Resignation, that's it. Horner is gone. That needling he had at the beginning of the year where Christian and he were exchanging barbs, that's all over now. Toto's saying, what am I going to do? Christian was an asshole, but he was my asshole. But yeah, if Russell does bite in the wake of all of these draggings of contract deals, the thing they have to do, if George announces an Aston Martin deal, lock Kimi in immediately. Toto, you said you can do a contract deal in a day. Do it in a day! Then give him bonuses if he's actually able to overperform as then the de facto new team leader or bastion or ambassador or mascot. The messaging would then pivot from we prefer short deals to we invest in a merit ladder, which is the same idea in friendlier clothing. And the line between flexibility and instability, it is really razor thin. Time is not infinite. Because I'm pretty sure why George may feel bruised, as Martin Brundle said, is that he is now in the thick of his prime. He is now heading toward his late 30s, and he would ideally like to know where he is going to be at for the next few years, as he then heads into the latter bit of his prime, and then maybe where he's going to be into the ends, the sunsets of his career, where he might be having fewer and fewer chances for world titles. So what does Toto need to do at this point? If he lets the clock run any more, someone else could set the terms, and that would become the story. And honestly, I prefer to call it what it is. Optionality with a wobble on it. If Mercedes wants to look like the Mercedes of old, where they look absolutely strong and stable and stoic like they were when they were dominating, just sort out Russell's contract as leader, and then keep Antonelli on a performance basis. Give him that 1-year deal just to kind of get him into the new rule set. Also, make that big announcement with George and Kimi. I know they've missed the boat in terms of doing it in their home countries and their home tracks, but you've really got to celebrate them. Celebrate what Russell and Antonelli mean to Mercedes. Make a big song and dance about it, with a full-blown press conference. Champion them. Say what their merits are, what they can provide the team going forward, not talk about Max at all. Because I'm sorry, the market has been really, really hot the last few months, and Mercedes have just looked absolutely dreadful. It really does go to show that Toto has very little experience when it comes to contractual negotiations, what with Nico Rosberg pulling a fast one on them and announcing his retirement, Valtteri Bottas never getting anything more than just a 1-year deal, and then George, the talks with him, stalling and not getting that third contract extension. And Antonelli, starting off on a 1-year deal, we're heading toward the final third of the season and there's still nothing? Wolff, what are you doing? I mean, it's okay right now, but if Aston Martin smells blood, and I smell a viewer who might be looking for more, something that you can get from this video here, I'll just be right back, okay? I've just got to go and change my top, okay?